Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the OAC's educational webinar series. My name is James Zervios, and I'm the OAC Director of Communications. We want to thank everybody who's joining us this evening for the first webinar in our educational series. These webinars came from our convention, the Your Weight Matters annual convention, which took place in Phoenix this year. The information was extremely valuable for those of you that were able to join us, and we wanted to be able to offer this to individuals who were not able to join us in Phoenix. And so the topics that will be presented throughout the month of October, each Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock, are actual topics that were presented at convention, and the individuals presenting them were the ones who actually presented them at convention as well. So our first topic up for tonight is, does that really work? Deciphering popular weight loss trends. We're going to go through the presentation tonight. It's going to be presented by Molly G and moderated by Robert Kushner. Up first, just a couple of housekeeping items. As you're viewing the presentation, if you have any questions or comments, we encourage you to go over to our Google Plus event page, where most of you are watching this right now. Please feel free to submit your question, and we will definitely address them at the end of the webinar. As well, if you'd like to submit a question to us privately, please feel free to send it to info, that's INFO, at obesityaction.org. So once again, that email address is info at obesityaction.org. All right, time to get started. So tonight's moderator is Robert Kushner, Dr. Kushner. He's a professor of medicine at the Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine and clinical director of the Northwestern Comprehensive Center on Obesity in Chicago. Dr. Kushner is very active in the OAC, and he is a national board member, and he also serves on the OAC Convention Planning Committee. Dr. Kushner, welcome tonight to the webinar. I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to you to get started.
Thank you, James, and I also want to welcome all the viewers tonight to what I think will be a very interesting presentation. It's my pleasure to introduce our presenter for this evening, who is Molly G. Translating science into practical terms to help corporate or individual clients has been a career goal for registered dietitian Molly G. Currently, Molly conducts research in obesity and diabetes at Baylor College of Medicine's Behavioral Medicine Research Center in Houston, Texas. Molly is also a passionate volunteer leader for the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and the Commission on Dietetics registration, as well as regular media sources. Now, about tonight's presentation, 2/3 of American adults are either overweight or obese, and the number continues to grow. Yet everyone is on a diet. Do they work? Learn about the facts that drive many popular diets today, successful lifestyle changes, and how to use credible resources for evaluation of diets. That's what Molly's going to cover. Molly, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bob. It's really an honor to be introduced by such a great leader and visionary in both the practice and advocacy of obesity. And you know I'm one of your biggest fans.
Thank you, Molly.
Okay. Well, to start, diet is really a four-letter word. And it's a four-letter word for many reasons. Take a look at the first three letters of diet. It spells die. And I bet a lot of people on some diets have felt that it's almost a fate worse than death. And certainly people go on and off diets. I'm sure many of the listeners are experts on the topic and could share many war stories. In fact, I really hope you do. So tonight we're going to talk about what really works and how we can navigate the ongoing flood of diets. Now, whenever I do presentations, it's my habit to sort of get an idea of people's dieting experiences. You know, I usually ask, who in the room has never been on a diet, and usually no hands go up, so everyone's an expert. So I really try to find out what diets people have actually tried, and believe me, the list seems endless. In fact, I'd love to hear about some of the diets you've tried, what's worked, and what didn't work. Certainly, the Google event page would be a great place to share this information. And what I find drives diets often is the media and also the bookstore. Those are usually uh, good starting points about a current diet. So let's look at how we will be spending our time together. And I think that before we can understand what really works, I think it's important to examine the whys of diets. Why do people go on diets? What triggers a common popular diet? So we're going to take some time and look at the anatomy of a diet. And certainly we know that over 50% of Americans are on a diet, and that also drives the demand for something new. Every time you turn around, there's going to be a new diet. So, what are the trends that drive this lucrative industry? And what really works? Finally, thinking about how we can help you sort through this explosion of diets that bombard us at every waking moment. Hopefully, I will provide you with some credible resources for safety's sake. The weight loss industry really seems to be recession-proof. Some recent marketing research shows projections of $66.5 billion. Now, this includes books, devices, programs, and so on. Maybe the government should go into the weight loss business. I think that would certainly help the economy. But all kidding aside, we know that over half of Americans are on a diet with at least 4 to 5 diets per year. Now, just to put it in perspective, the 108 million dieters translates into the population of 4 states: California, Texas, New York, and Florida combined. So can you imagine 4 of the biggest states, that population is how many people are on a diet. This next slide really is a commercial that came across my email totally unsolicited. Now, I use this example because I think it represents most of the elements that appeal to someone that wants to lose weight yesterday. Well, first of all, you can do it quickly in 2 days. 12 pounds, not bad. And I have to say, the price is right. It's free. And as we look a little further, it's risk-free and, of course, guaranteed results. Now, what more can someone ask for? And does this sound too good to be true? What do you think? Well, my theory is that $19.95 plus shipping and handling is a sweet spot for most products, according to the infomercials I've watched. And think about someone that is trying to lose weight. If, a $20 in change, wouldn't that be a worthwhile investment just in case it might work? And this is probably a list of some of the quick fixes that there's some ODs and some ones that are a little bit more drastic than others. I guess, if you want something easy and don't want to chew, the baby food diet, then we have the KE, ketogenic enteral diet, or it's also known as the wedding dress diet. So can you imagine a bride wanting desperately to fit into her wedding gown at her all-time low, submitting herself to a feeding tube a few days before her wedding? Then you have the juicing, the cabbage soup diet. That's an ODie. also known as the Dolly Parton diet. And I have to tell you a funny story about that. I had a patient who was telling me that, her neighbor had great results with the cabbage soup. So as we kept talking about what appealed to her, it was primarily because her neighbor was able to lose weight. And so she thought, well, I'll try it. When I asked her what her family thought, she said quite honestly, well, you know what? I didn't think about them, but they hate cabbage. Needless to say, that was a short-lived diet. But you go on, and you see that the thing that most of these quick fix diets have in common is there's usually a key gimmick or something that you will remember and maybe just sort of give it a try. But again, these are quick fixes, nothing that anyone would imagine staying on for very long. Now, trending now, I sort of categorize these into various categories. And I will have to say that celebrities and sports figures really do sell. And an example of that is you take a look at some of the common commercial programs. And certainly, we know that Jennifer Hudson, Jessica Simpson, now that her baby's a little bit older, she's ready to lose her baby weight. We take a look at sports celebrities like Dan Marino, but of course, the most lovable in my book is Charles Barkley. The detox plans, that always puzzles me about the appeal of really fasting and thinking about how long could someone really stay on something like that. With patients that are of a certain age, I often ask, have you ever had a colonoscopy prep? Usually they hesitate and they think. And so I remind them that, when you think about fasting, how long do you think you would be able to do that? So again, the promises of a detox diet, I think, are short-lived once people really consider. Then you take a look at the basic nutrients, low or high. With carbs in the Dr. Atkins certainly popularized the low carb movement as early as 1972, and it really regained popularity with the new millennium in the year 2000. And that probably is the reason that the paleo, also known as the caveman diet, became more popular. Keeping in mind that when you decrease one macronutrient, whether it be carbohydrate, protein, or fat, then another nutrient has to take over just for that balance. And then just as I put down gluten, this is a quick reminder that I know that gluten-free products are just all over the grocery shelves, but a reminder that gluten-free does not mean calorie-free. It's not designed to be a weight loss diet. Well, if you're not confused yet, then I'd really worry about you because, as I said earlier at the beginning, there are so many diets that come our way. And even at the grocery store, I think that I often hear about diets from my patients. And when I ask them where they get the information, often they tell me that they read about it. And I will tell you that I now have started reading the tabloids when I'm waiting in line at the grocery store because there's always a story about the next best diet. Now, when in doubt, you really do have to ask yourself, how legitimate is this? This is a sort of a list of things to consider when you're trying to evaluate a diet or some particular statement. And this is the 10 red flags of junk science that was compiled by some key health organizations to really help people determine whether or not it's fact or fiction. And most of the time, they've taken just a grain of science and really expanded it. They put the little science on steroids. So some of the things that I would really recommend keeping an eye on is, anytime there's a promise of a quick fix, or taking a look at the second one, sort of villainizing a particular food or nutrient. Some of you may remember in the 90s that the villain nutrient was fats. Anything that contained fat was bad for you. So there was definitely the explosion of products that were either fat-free, low-fat, etc. But the one thing that people forgot was, even though it was lower in fat, it still contained calories. So that didn't last very long. And as I said earlier, in the new millennium, in the year 2000, then the popularity of low-carb diets really took off. And certainly, we still see a lot of low-carb products in the marketplace. And then right now, I think that there's more of a movement toward individualizing, tailoring, and then also people are really looking at the benefits of a little more protein for satiety's sake. Anytime a claim sounds too good to be true, run. And then probably I would say, if there's a list of good versus bad foods, keeping in mind there's really no magic property in any foods. Often I'm asked, what is the most nutritious food or vegetable that you can eat? And my response usually is, it's the food that you will eat. Because, for example, I remind people, you don't eat nutrition, you actually eat food. So it's got to be a vegetable you enjoy. And then the other sort of top line item that I just call out is that, if recommendations are made to sell a product, then profit is probably one of the agendas. So read through this, keep this around. Anytime a new diet comes onto the block, just use this as sort of a guide to really evaluate that particular diet. Now, what really works? Well, the simple answer is diet and exercise. Eating less and moving more is the simplest answer that health professionals can provide. But I think that we all know that obesity is such a complex chronic disease. We know that it can affect our health in countless ways, and certainly every major organ system in our body can possibly be affected. So it is not as simple as just eating less and moving more. But for the purpose of today's time together, we are going to focus more on just lifestyle and taking a look at the what would be appropriate as far as guidance for diets. So, that's really what we're going to spend our time on. Now, as far as answers about what works and what's good for you, the USDA has provided certainly the dietary guidelines for Americans, which is updated every 5 years. So we've graduated from my pyramid to choosing my plate. And I really think that just the visual demonstration of, what foods are best for you is really, really helpful. And then we also have the DASH diet, and this is an acronym for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. Both of these programs are free on the internet, you can go and to those websites, and they really provide evidence-based diets that provide actual menus, recipes, shopping lists. So certainly we know what can possibly work. However, my very, very favorite is do it yourself, tailoring your own diet with a healthcare professional. I think that individualizing plans is the ones that will work for you. Keep in mind that the reason you want it tailored to yourself is that you know yourself that your life and situation changes over time. So it really makes sense that your lifestyle will too. You know, often when I have a new patient, um, you know, I ask them about their favorite foods. Usually they're reluctant to tell me about their favorite ice cream, chocolate, pizza, or Mexican food. But they're really surprised when I tell them that I will always remember to work those into their eating plan. Again, reinforcing that it is tailoring their particular plan that's going to make it your program. Now, this slide really talks about what works. This provides clues and guidance about people that have been successful in losing weight. This is the National Weight Control Registry, and this was developed in 1994 by two obesity researchers, Jim Hill and Rena Wing. And the enrollment for this registry basically is that a person has lost 30 pounds and been able to keep it off for 1 year. Then these individuals sign up for the registry and they receive surveys about the habits that help them to be successful in keeping weight off. It has over 10,000 members. 80% of the members are women. The average woman is 45 and weighs about 145. The average man is 49 and weighs about 190. Now, this is what's really exciting, is that registry members have lost an average of 66 pounds and kept it off for about 5.5 years. So, you know, we can certainly learn from members of the registry. But certainly the takeaway messages for keeping pounds off seem to skew toward having breakfast every day, weighing at least once a week, exercising about an hour every day. And most people, their exercise of choice is walking. Um, and then certainly it stands to reason that, you know, they're staying active and not with a remote control. I would say that if you want to get started or restart your efforts, the single most important thing to do is know what you're doing. And this is where a food record really comes into play. You know, increasing your awareness and then also just sort of your own self-accountability. You think about another sort of analogy. I know everyone is thinking about, you know, uh, certainly in this time of the economy, you know, keeping a budget. But before you can really budget, you've got to know where your money's going. And so certainly to lose weight, you've got to know how you're spending your calories so you can really exercise options. So if there's one thing that I usually tell people to do, it is really to keep track of what they're eating because food really sneaks up on you. Now, this is where technology can really help. Um, Over the years, my patients who have gotten tired of keeping food records have said, you know, I'm just tired of writing the same old thing. And so now I find with my clients, there are several websites, several apps that they put on their phone. They can quickly record what they're eating. Many people eat a very similar breakfast each day, so it's really easy because it's already in their bank, in their list, so they just pull it over. But these are a few apps that I think my patients have really found helpful. MyFitnessPal, Lose It, um, and FujiCake is a really a fun app as well. Then we take a look at different accelerometers. I mean, this is a step up from a pedometer. And Fitbit, the Fuel Band, there's so many that are out there. So you really need to find the one that would fit your lifestyle. And I've been known to say that these activity monitors, they've really become fashion statements. Now, just a shout out to a couple of these bands. Some of them can really also monitor your sleep. And research is really showing that sleep plays a role in weight loss. So this is another added bonus. Video games, if this can really play into being with a family and staying active. And then social networks. Sparks People probably is one of the most popular because you can get as much from them as you want in relationship to, you can get emails across your email every day if you want on topics of physical activity. You can get recipes. I mean, you can get messages about how to manage stress. So it is really comprehensive. And then this is a shout out for my colleagues, my registered dietitians. Nutrition Blog Network is a sort of an aggregate of blogs that registered dietitians are running. So they provide a wealth of information from, if you are a avid cook, lots of recipes. If you want ideas about physical activity, again, there's lots of information on the Nutrition Blog Network by registered dietitians. Now, where do you go for credible information? Well, certainly at the top of the leaderboard is our own organization, Obesity Action Coalition, and certainly the magazine is a great magazine, always great columns and articles and resources. And I want to say that physicians continue to be the air traffic controller for your health. In fact, Dr. Robert Kushner really saw the complexity of obesity as a true subspecialty, and he was a leader in starting the specialty credential for obesity medicine. And this really ensures that physicians who really work with obesity, really understand all the complexity. And so it's a specialty exam, and I know that they have given the test a couple of times now, so I think that this is something that we're going to be looking out at when you're selecting a physician. Now, because we follow leaders like Dr. Kushner, registered dietitians, and the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, we recently felt that as healthcare professionals, we wanted a specialty credential as well. So registered dietitians are also creating a specialty credential for the prevention and the treatment of obesity. Now, it's a mouthful, but I'm going to make sure that this won't be the last time you hear it. We are going to be certified specialists in obesity and weight management. So keep your eyes peeled. It should be out probably in about a year and a half. So we're real excited about that. And then certainly other healthcare professionals, they are great resources as far as, really understanding the complexity and translating that into the treatment for obesity. And it's not just obesity that we're talking about. It's really taking a look at other comorbidities of obesity, because you're not just treating overweight, you're treating hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. So again, it is where you need to be sure that the person that is providing advice, is well qualified. This is a screenshot of my professional organization's uh, interest in making sure that the public is aware of all of the different popular diets and apps. What happens in our organization, we have over 72,000 members. We do have spokespersons for our organization, and each year they provide a review of the popular diets and apps. And this is available to the public. And what they try to do with the different diets, they look at what each diet, what the claims are. They provide a summary of the diet, nutrition pros and cons, and conclude with the bottom line of that particular diet. This is just an example of some of the consumer diet reviews, some of the diets that have been reviewed. At the very bottom of the lower right-hand corner, you can see the website. This is, as I said, for the public. We really do want to help the public sort through the different diets that come. And as you look at this list, it's amazing to know that French, Japanese, and the Italian have found the secret for weight loss. I guess it's time for me to really understand if Chinese women, what their secret might be as well. But you take a look at the one thing that's interesting about diet books. They always take a look at something that will catch your eye. Whether it's the mafia, the Gotti diet, whether or not you're going to cheat and still lose weight. So again, this is just sort of tongue-in-cheek. It's amazing, but this is what sells books. So really, go to the website, eatright.org, diet reviews. I put this slide up because this is sort of a summary of the information that is provided on the different website, this website, and this happens to be an example of a celebrity, of course, Alicia Silverstone, and she's really promoting a vegan diet. And basically, she wants to have you start off with just entertaining a plant-based diet, and then going into the details about where you're going to get your protein. And primarily, it's all plant proteins, and making sure that there are no dairy or no animal products. And this is where, as a registered dietitian, you would really work with an individual and really find out whether or not it would really meet your needs as far as nutrition adequacy. And then the one thing, if I were reviewing this particular diet, you'd look at what she calls superheroes. And this is where I'm very pragmatic in regard to, what's reasonable, where would you have to go to find these special foods or ingredients? I don't think my Kroger carries these particular items. So again, this is not one that I would probably highly recommend. I put this particular slide up because this has been very, very popular, the HCG diet. This has been around for a long time. I mean, I started in the 50s, and one of the things to really call out is the fact that, its claims that by taking this hormone, that you will suppress hunger and you will fix your metabolism, etc. that speed it up that you would be able to lose weight. Common sense would really dictate asking yourselves, do you think the calorie restriction of 500 calories per day has anything to do with weight loss? And then a step further, uh, I think that all health professionals, uh, their first thing that they want to do is make sure that you are safe. And so safety comes first as far as anything you would end up trying. And certainly in December, 2 years ago, the FDA and the FTC really wanted to stop the different companies that were marketing over-the-counter HCGs because they deemed it unsafe. So this is again where a healthcare professional, if you have any questions about whether or not something would be safe, that's your first line of defense. Always check, with your physician or healthcare professional. Now, as we get closer to the end, because we wanted to get adequate time for questions and answers, I think the takeaway messages is anytime there are major promises, look for the buzzwords of guaranteed, uh, uh, taking a look at risk-free. Uh, those are words that you really need to consider red flags. And any large weight losses in a short period of time, you may experience a large weight loss, but again, going back to the notion of being safe and your health is the most important thing. Second bullet, choosing an approach that fits you. It's so important to take in consideration your lifestyle and where you are, how much time you have to spend in your particular modification of your lifestyle. I know that with some of my long-term patients, recently I had a patient who didn't have much time because they were busy traveling a great deal, and so they were eating on the road a great deal. But then they were fortunate enough to retire. And so now, this particular patient, she never cooked before, but now cooking is a passion, not just a hobby. So being flexible and making sure that the program fits where you are now. So being flexible. Don't retrofit a diet just for diet's sake. Setting attainable goals. I mentioned earlier, if there's one thing that I'd recommend, and that's really keeping a log, reminding ourselves that weight loss is a journey, not a destination. A few months ago, the American Medical Association finally recognized that obesity is a chronic disease. So keep in mind that it's something that, it requires constant effort. If you would look at another chronic disease, like, for example, diabetes, no one would ever say, well, you don't have you can stop doing the treatment that works for you. You can stop taking your medications, you can stop exercising, you can stop counting your carbs. No one would ever say that because diabetes is a chronic disease. It's the same thing with obesity, really discovering what really works for you and keeping it up. And then finally, the bottom line is it is about your health. So never compromise that. So with that, I hope that some of you have shared some of your experiences with the event page. And if you have any questions that you would share with us, we'd love to hear them. And in the words of the Royals, keep calm, and from this commoner, please forget fad diets. So now the rest of the time we will entertain questions and comments, and hopefully, Bob, you'll help me out too.
I'm here. Yeah, I'll back you up.
Well, thank you very much, Molly and Dr. Kushner, for doing this webinar tonight. We have a great deal of questions, so we're going to try to get to all of them. Our first question tonight, from a professional perspective, what are the gaps in primary prevention efforts related to obesity?
You want me to take that one, Molly?
Go ahead, Bob.
We're certainly learning more and more about the complexity of obesity and the underlying determinants, many of which we did not appreciate earlier. I'd say the most basic or primordial prevention effort is when the mother's pregnant, before before she has her first baby. We now know that excessive weight gain during pregnancy or going into pregnancy overweight sets the stage for increasing the risk of having the newborn develop obesity in his or her lifetime, as well as diabetes and other metabolic problems. So that's where a lot of effort is now being turned, is to make sure that pregnancy is as healthy as possible. The next primary prevention time would be very early childhood, where parenting and good eating habits and developing routine physical activity is exceedingly important, because if that child continues to grow at a very high percentile rate for height and age, there's an increased likelihood that that child and then adolescent and teenager is going to be an overweight or obese adult. So that's where a lot of the work is being focused on, and you know about Michelle Obama's initiative, Let's Move. Is that I think it's called Let's Move. I may be blanking. Yeah. So those where all those initiatives are, and a lot of money is being put in those two initiatives.
Yeah. And I want to add one other thing is that, I mean, up until recently, when you're taking a look at primary prevention, I hate to say this, but bottom line, for many years, I really did a lot of corporate health and just primary prevention. And one of the driving factors is it reimbursed? And so I think that that unfortunately does dictate a lot of the efforts to that. But to piggyback what Bob was saying, we're doing a lot of things now in our environment that makes it easier for people to walk. I mean, just a simple thing like a place that you can walk safely. So looking in your own community, and this is where advocacy really makes a big difference, where each of us needs to get involved and advocate to make your community a place where you can ride your bike, you can walk, and then also at your child's school, getting involved and seeing that the healthiest options are available.
Excellent. I think that's a good segue to our next question here. It says, obesity runs in my family and my baby is 6 months old. Should I give my baby skim milk?
Well, I understand the rationale behind that question, but for your baby's, I'll say it, IQ and brain development, the American Academy of Pediatrics does not recommend reduced fat milk until after the age of 2 years old. So up until then, just regular whole milk is really best because of the fatty acids.
Excellent. Our next question. I eat a lot of protein, beef, pork, even chicken sometimes, but a lot of beef. Very little potatoes, but a moderate amount of short grain rice with every meal. Also, I am a very active delivery person, but I've still gained 48 pounds in the last 5 months.
That's a very rapid weight gain in a very short period of time. And as a clinician or physician, I would take a very detailed history in someone with a rapid weight gain over a short period of time. The types of, and I don't know about this viewer in particular, but the things that I would be probing for is, has there been a change in medication? Some of the medications we take every day, it could be an antihistamine, it could be a beta blocker for heart disease, it could be an anti-diabetes medication, or steroids we may take for asthma or for mental health conditions. A lot of these medications can cause weight gain as a secondary factor. Stopping smoking can cause weight gain in some birth control pills, or starting Depo-Provera. So those are the first things that I would be probing as a cause for that. And there are some medical conditions, although fairly uncommon. So if there's a concern about a change in weight trajectory, it's just really a significant change from the rest of your earlier years, I would really see your healthcare provider to evaluate for any underlying conditions.
Yeah. And I'd also just, hopefully there's not any major medical issue, but this is another place where, the listener mentioned sort of a brief diet history, but this is where you could really help your physician by keeping a food record and with giving amounts and so forth. That would really help as well.
Excellent. Our next question is, I'm a healthcare professional and we have very little training in obesity treatment and fat loss. Patients have inconsistent results with the less calories in, burn more calories method. Do you have any thoughts or comments about plans, protocols that claim fat loss is hormonally regulated? As an example, I'll cite Dr. Jade Teta and the metabolic effect.
I'm not. We certainly know that body weight and body shape is in part hormonally regulated. We know women look different than men. We know that as women go through menopause, there's a change in body shape, where there's an increase in waist circumference and somewhat a loss in the lower body fat. So we know that occurs, and even men who have changes in testosterone can have a change in muscle mass. So we know that's true, but we really don't advocate hormonal treatment for weight loss. I'm not sure if that's exactly what the viewer is asking. We really do feel that the energy balance equation still holds. You still need to watch the amount of calories you're taking in and be cognizant and measure your calories going out. I tell patients it's either that simple or that complex. And of course, it's not that simple. You have to turn those concepts into strategies. And that's where working with a healthcare professional comes in, or with a healthcare plan or a weight loss plan.
And believe it or not, there have been times that I've worked with clients where, they actually were taking in too few calories. And so that can really play havoc with your metabolic rate as well. So less is not always better when it comes to making sure that your body has all of the fuel that it does need to operate.
Excellent. Our next question, it says, diets are easy on paper, but when you apply them to real life, it's very difficult. For instance, I can't afford to spend whatever on the proper food and beverages. Insurance doesn't typically cover working with a nutritionist. I work about 14 to 16 hours a day. I hate cooking. I don't eat meat. Now what? It's also very discouraging when companies penalize employees who are affected by excess weight. They claim it's encouraging someone to improve one's health. However, we all know it's about lower costs for the company. So what's the answer?
This is where, often health professionals take a look that, one size does not fit all. And I know that, I know that, Bob and I talk a lot about tools in your toolkit, what might be appropriate for a particular patient. And listening to your description, it seems like time is a factor, just making, and you lead a very busy life. And this is where, when we're taking a look at what's the best way to control your calories, portion control. Anything that you can do to control your intake in the form of perhaps meal replacements. And we define meal replacements as anything that is measurable, that's a constant. It could be a frozen meal. It could certainly be a bar. It could be a shake. It could be, uh, if you measure your cereal and milk, that would constitute portion control. That would probably be what I would recommend, just to get you jump started.
Our next question is another trend that I've been reading about lately is low sugar diets, mainly trying to give up nearly all sugars and sweeteners for weight loss. What do you think about these diets?
Well, I think that I mentioned earlier that I'm pretty pragmatic. After really understanding, what role sugar does play in your diet, and making a modification. I would say basically, if it's something that you feel is a problem, then there's nothing wrong with reducing the amount of sugar. Now, keep in mind that fruit does contain sugar as well, although it's a different type of sugar. But this is where I would really work with you and have you keep a food record so we can really get a benchmark of what we're starting off with, and then you telling me where you think the problem areas, because this is a partnership, where you kind of we do problem solving together. But no, I wouldn't say that it's a bad thing to do. I'd say let's try it and see how it goes.
Our next question, I've heard there are some magical foods like grapefruit and cabbage that burn fat. Is there any truth to this?
Well, if there were some magical foods, I would certainly bottle it and sell it and retire. Unfortunately, there really is no fact to any particular food having any magical properties. I do think that a lot of times it works on the principle of energy density, and there's one strategy that's called volumetrics, where you really try to fill up on foods that are lower in fat and calories and higher in, say, water and also air. So, just for an example, I would recommend, if you're looking for some strategy, perhaps drinking a beverage like water or some non-caloric beverage before you start a meal, having some broth before you start a meal. Again, it provides a sense of filling up before the main event and where the majority of your calories might come. But that's about as close as I would say about any magic. It's more of a strategy.
Well, thank you very much. And those are all of our questions for this evening. I want to thank Molly and Dr. Kushner for doing tonight's webinar. Any last words, Molly or Dr. Kushner?
Well, I think that first of all, if you are interested in losing weight, it's never too late, and never give up. So it's a message of optimism, because you just have to take that first step literally, and then also write it down and see where you're starting. But the main thing is get started, and your overall health is at stake.
Great. I think Molly did a wonderful job. I think people are often frustrated and desperate when it comes to losing weight, and I think that's what drives them to all of these books and programs that you summarize so well that really are not particularly effective. I would encourage everyone to reflect on their diet, make sensible changes when indicated, and to seek a healthcare professional to get advice.
Excellent. And as always, from the OAC perspective, for those of you that are not familiar with the Obesity Action Coalition, please visit our website at www.obesityaction.org. And we have many different sections on there that talk more about diet, nutrition, so on and so forth. And with that, I'd like to quickly preview next week's webinar, which will be Who's Staring Back at You in the Mirror? Improving Self-Perception. This one will be hosted by Meryl Littleberry, better known as Vitamin M to many of you out there. So please join us next Tuesday evening, October 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. For those of you that were able to join us this evening for tonight's webinar, it will also be available on the OAC's YouTube channel tomorrow. So if you want to go back and watch it again, or you want to share it with friends or family members, please feel free to do so. Once again, we thank all of you for joining us this evening. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Dr. Kushner. And we look forward to seeing everybody next week, Tuesday, October 15th at 8 p.m. Thank you very much. Good night.